Welcome to my podcast, Bruises, where every scar tells a story. This is our first podcast. And who am I? This is a good question, right? My name is Jessica Elmish. I am the author of Camouflage Bruises, a memoir of loyalty and betrayal. And it was originally published in 2005. It was a part of my senior thesis at Yale University. Really looking to bring in the younger generations to this story because I'm hearing a lot of inner angst that's very reminiscent of what I went through when I was a young woman, coming of age, and it's actually quite troubling for me to hear these accumulative stories because I thought we had pretty much resolved many of those issues, and so my hope is to engage new generations to this story in hopes to inspire those that are on their own identity journey, maybe feeling some inner angst and some struggles, claiming their self-authenticity. And it's quite possible that a new audience, new generations, really, we've got the millennials still, the Gen Zs, and the fresh-faced alphas out there. And through the story, I think that they might see reflections of themselves in Camouflage Bruises. So the story is essentially, Camouflage Bruises is a coming-of-age story. It is based off of my journey as a girl, as a young woman, traversing a very hyper-masculine, homophobic environment in the Marine Corps. I was an active duty Marine. And in those days, we've come such a long way, but in those days, I was an anomaly, and in so many ways. My recruiter actually told me I've never recruited a woman for my Marine Corps. And at 17 years old, I said, well, I guess I'm going to be your first. So it was not only a courageous move for me to even think of joining the Marine Corps, but I had to actually convince my recruiter to sign me on. So that was the first obstacle right there, because it wasn't really popular at the recruiting station to bring women into their Marine Corps. So I was already an outsider because I was a girl. So the story pretty much picks up there in terms of from girl to woman, going from this very naive, really I was quite naive, to coming of age and growing into this growth trajectory as a woman traversing this environment in active duty Marine Corps. But there's also a love story in Camouflage Bruises. For me personally, of course, this is a personal story, but it is the most poignant part of the story for me. So in Camouflage Bruises, interspersed throughout the story, it'll flash back to this budding love story between the protagonist, me, and another young girl. And so I think that the readers will find the power of love that can transcend so many obstacles that we may face in society when we are attempting to claim our authentic identity. The power of love. The story really culminates with that. I don't want to give the story away, but there definitely is a love story. Without that love story, there would be really no Camouflage Bruises. So now, I think Devin asked me earlier about if I had to choose one quote from the book, right?
Yeah.
That I thought encapsulates the story. And I thought about that, and in the beginning of this story, I quote Audre Lorde, the Black lesbian poet. And for me, that is probably the most poignant quote in the book. It has nothing to do with my words, my written words. But her quote is, "Your silence will not protect you." And I remember reading that. I remember reading her work as a student at Yale. And that sentence really, I felt liberated when I read that, because it gave me permission to not be afraid. And I was really transformed the moment I read that. And I thought about my own silence. It was at that moment when I read Audre Lorde's work that I'm like, this silence of mine is not protecting me. So that's one of the reasons why I started to write Camouflage Bruises, to break that silence, my own personal silence. The quote that I believe that encapsulates the story, again, comes from Audre Lorde. And her quote, "Your silence will not protect you," that was in one of her essays in 1977. She gave a speech, and she articulated that quote. It permeated my soul. And those words, "your silence will not protect you," really permeates every page of Camouflage Bruises. My hope as a writer is that Camouflage Bruises could have a similar effect on the readers. I'm hoping that the readers come out of the story with this keen understanding that if they have been silencing themselves, if they have been censoring themselves in life, as a woman, as a non-heterosexual human, the time to stop that is probably right now. And I would say, right now. I'm going to drink to that. Okay? Stop it right now. I dare say I'm a little bit pissed off about it because my generation, I'm Gen X, and the boomers and the generations from decades past back to the Lavender Scare, we went through absolute hell, laying a path, burning a path for these younger generations to not feel the way we felt. I understand some of the political environment has changed, and so some of the uglies have come out of the tree line, but it's much easier now to push back than it was when I was coming through, when the baby boomers, and you reach back, several decades, we were living in terror. We were absolutely living in total terror. Even for me, coming through, excuse me, I forgot to drink to that. Hold on. Stop silencing yourself today. Stop it. So one of the reasons why I was really excited to work with Ethan and Devin on this podcast is because over the past few years, I've been hearing, again, I'm reiterating, but I've been hearing this identity insecurity theme amongst the younger generations. And at first I was a bit puzzled by it. Like, is this real? What? But no, it is real. The more I hear individual stories, the more real it becomes for me. And now I have questions once again. I want the younger generations to tell me, yes, I understand that there's been some erosion of some victories once, from decades past, yes. But what I don't understand is the identity insecurity to the point which you are completely censoring yourself. You are completely maybe in, maybe even self-loathing or erasing yourself completely because of fear of ostracization from family or church. But that's always been there. But we have more support systems now to help you. We have some legislation in place also to support you. So I really want to know what's still holding you back. It may not be an easy road. It never was. But it's much easier today than it was before. That I assure you. And real quick, I do want to touch on some personal experience back. I'm going to crank it back to 1991 when I was in the Marine Corps as a young woman. It was a crime for you to be gay in the military. Clinton did come along, and he signed the legislation for Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Truthfully, that really didn't help much. There was still a witch hunt a witch hunt going on. And if they found you, I don't know if you saw that movie G.I. Jane, but very similar. In fact, when I saw that movie, I saw it with some straight friends. They're like, oh, that's Hollywood. I'm like, no, that's my life. That I lived that. But yeah, they would have witch hunts. If they found you hanging out with the same sex for too long, or if they didn't even like you, they would make up stories about you, and then it would become an investigation. You know, your rank, your pay, everything would be taken from you. Your VA benefits, you'd be thrown in the brig. So my point is that things are much easier today than they were then. And I think for the podcast, I want to bring the younger generations into perspective of that. And if anyone out there is censoring themselves, silencing themselves, self-loathing, okay, we need to stop this today. You really do. It is so unnecessary. Fear, that's, a healthy human response to possible insecurities, but together as a collective voice, we can push through this together. So, yeah, I'm Jessica L. Mish. I am the author of Camouflage Bruises, a memoir of loyalty and betrayal. It's based off of my life experience as a young girl, and as a young woman traversing through active duty Marine Corps in the 1990s, the early 1990s, starting in the early 1990s. And welcome to my podcast, Bruises, where every scar tells a story.